Hey everybody, it's your boy VG Time back again after a little bit of a layoff with a new deck profile. Now, Shroom and Salsa is by far my favorite leader. But before they were, I had another leader that was my favorite all-time leader. Just because of how unique its playstyle and deck building was, as well as the skill it had that I really put anybody to the test to show me anything that's much cooler than this. So anyway, we're going to get right into it. So what we're talking about is the Set 3 Mira leader. This leader was probably my first truly unique leader that I was playing. At the time when this came out, people were running like Cooler because it milled 3, the Mass Saiyan leader from this trial deck because it milled 3, a bunch of things because that's what they wanted to do to take advantage of Overrealm. But I was drawn to this leader because it did something that only one other leader does, which is his Trunks equivalent, and it has to do with the Awakening. This is when your life is 4 or less, you may choose one card in your warp and add it to your hand, then flip this card over. So that allowed you to have a toolbox, so to speak, set up in your warp so you could grab exactly what you needed at the time. This did require setup and forethought, but I always thought that this ability was extremely strong. Granted, from a card advantage standpoint, drawing 2 is much better. Untapping 1 and drawing 1 from a practical standpoint is probably a little bit better. And untap 2, we all know that is completely busted, and that's why we love it. But this has its own charm to it. The other thing that set this leader apart from every other leader that existed at the time was that it drew on the front side without having to attack a leader. So it says here, when this card attacks, place the top 2 cards of your deck in your drop area. Then if there is a green or yellow card in your battle area or drop area, draw a card. So once this condition is true once, you basically kept it for the rest of the game, and you just swing on whatever and draw a card. Now when you awaken and you got your card for the warp, you got this guy right here, Dark Warrior Mira. Now this guy was a house because if there were 5 or more cards in your warp, it was always critical. Basically, the rest of the game, you had a 15k crit swinging leader that drew you a card on swing. Then you also had the ability to just mill 2 as an activate main if you needed to set up another Overrealm. Even though this deck can set up Overrealms, it's not really an Overrealm deck per se. But its skills, the ability to attack and draw without attacking the leader, the ability to swing always with crit on the backside, inherently sets up a nice hand control deck. Now, the reason, number 3, I was drawn to this leader, other than the Awakening condition and the fact it could draw without attacking a leader, which was very unique at the time, was my gaming background, which was I was playing Magic heavily, and then I was convinced to play Dragon Ball around set 2, 1-2 transition period. And even though I was playing and I was enjoying the game, there wasn't anything that was screaming out to me, man, I really need to play this particular deck or that particular deck. This guy was a difference because the deck I was playing at that time was a version of the Rock. And the Rock was a black-green mid-range control deck that existed, and I saw the potential to make that kind of deck out of this leader since it did benefit from milling green cards. So anyway, let's get into it. We have our Self-Awakeners, we have our Gohans, which are also crit swingers, and we have our Frieza that could give us our life without actually having to swing, because he just does it on play. We have Berry Blue, which is a new addition to the deck, because before I wasn't really running unisons like that. But Berry Blue allows us to get our primary unison, which is Bardock, and also our primary field, which is Frieza's Army Healing Pod. Now, this edition, as well as several of these other cards, I gotta give them a shout out to the person. There was a person from the Ganja Force that showed up to my Sword Championships, and he played a version of Golden Frieza, which if you look at my Twitch, I think the VOD is still up. I might even break it out and put it up here on the channel. But he played a version of Golden Frieza that was pretty darn close to mono green. He was playing the Berry Blue Bardock package, as well as this next card, which is Dispo. That was cool because I was seeing him pop cards with the Golden Frieza to untap energy, then use a Dispo to bring back the same card to pop with Bardock to rip a card out their hand. Pretty strong effect. Here it's not quite as strong, but it's strong for other reasons. So I'll get back at Dispo in a second. So as mentioned, it's a hand control deck. And one of the big things that I saw that I did not realize was that this card does not require your leader to be green. It just requires you to have 3 or more mono green energy. So as long as you can meet that requirement, you can play this for 1 and rip a card out your opponent's hand and pressure them with a 15k crit attacker. That made me want to rebuild and update this deck all over again. So play this for a single green, you rip a card out their hand, cool. Then you could transition that into a Fuse Zamasu ZDay Wrath, which is well known. And another way you could do that is you could Charismatic Villain into a Fuse Zamasu ZDay Wrath, which again, none of this requires your leader to be green. Now, getting back into Dispo. Dispo, besides bringing back the 1-drop so you could have fuel to pop with your Unison, also warps itself from the drop for 0 energy. That sets up the Mass Saiyan Belligerent Warrior. This is again one of my favorite black cards that has come out in a long time, and it was very hard to fit into decks that didn't run a lot of Overwhelm, but all that it requires is that your leader is black and you sent a card from your drop to your warp this turn. Boo. Dispo does that. We got Relentless Destruction Mira. This is another boom, rip a card out their hand. And then we could get into another card that surprised me, which is the Grade 8 Vegeta Last Ditch Transformation. So you have to just be able to pay green and that there is a field somewhere. If you're playing against a lot of Gohan, you're going to just be able to play this card anyway. If you are able to get to your healing pod, you're going to be able to play this card, you know, in your second turn, third turn, whatever, and take advantage of it as well. So why pod, you ask? Well, pod synergizes extremely well with Dispo. So not only do you get to get back fuel for your Unison when you activate Dispo, if you have pod out there, you also get to draw a card. So you warp, give guy back, draw a card. Simple as that. And then again, helps you be able to play the monkey. Now we have our super combo, which is Son Goten, which is able to be super combo when you have 5 more cards in your warp, which to me is the best kind of super combo for a deck like this. And then lastly, we have our negate packages, which is 2 copies of Kai, which is fairly, again, easy to set up. 2 copies of Goku's Command Man Deflection, which people will not see coming out of this deck, because again, people forget that your leader doesn't have to be green for the counter attack part. And then we also have one of the best negates in the game right now, Petrification. So we have this mean 3 hard negate lineup, right? And then we also have our soft negate, which is Son Gohan Hostile Saiyan Encounter. This is another card I make sure I get into every black deck that I can. You're not going to be using the black when it's Z-Charge effect. If you do Z-Charge it, it's just to send it to the drop for a card you were planning on playing from your Z deck anyway. And then from that point, if you have 4 or less life, you are able to take a life and take a card from your hand, put it at the bottom of your deck, play this in rest mode, negate the attack as an auto, which is important. And also is immune to being hit with like the anti-floodgate cards, because whether or not it's played doesn't stop whether or not this card right here negates. Then lastly, we'll talk about the elephant in the room as far as the main deck, and that's our ultimate. I know this card reads terribly, and I agree that it is not that great of a card, but 2 things going for it. 1, people are not expecting you to counterplay with something that prevents the play of a card in black that costs it costs more than 3 energy, right? So you could catch people lacking pretty hard with this card on their turn. Secondly, there's no way to get this card off your board on their turn unless they come -40 off of this card, or has some way to negate its skills while it's in active mode and then get rid of the card. Thirdly, if you're playing the Black Mirror, this card is live turn 2 in most cases. So now this is super amounts of pressure to your opponent. They are going, okay, cool, I set this up, overwhelm, pay the cost, send these 6 cards to the warp to play this Goku, and you already have a couple of cards in your warp. You get to counterplay with this card right here. You would counterplay with this, you would prevent the Goku from ever coming into play. You would then get to stack a bunch of cards underneath here, hopefully. And then if they try to attack with anything else, you're just going to keep warping them, and then you have, on your turn, a dual attacker. And worst comes to worst, this guy has no specified cost. He gets reduced by 7 if there are 7 or more cards in either between both players' warps. And you could just hard cast this for 1 and have a 40k dual attacker, which could win you the game by itself. Other options, of course, exist. We had the option of Pan, of course. Supreme Kai is also very, very strong, but we needed to make sure it was something that didn't cost specified black to use, and I did not want to spend more than 1 energy on it. So that is why we went with Mecha Kabura. This deck used to run heroines, but we can no longer abuse heroines, so Mecha Kabura it is. ZDay. I put a little bit of thought into this because there's some cool things going on here. So 1, Frieza. Frieza does not require your leader to be green, which is another thing I did not realize. It's super generic as long as you have the 2 green energy to pay for it. Of course, we know what it does. When you swing with one of your green battle cards costs 2 or more, you get to sack as the energy, and then you're able to rip a card out your opponent's hand. That synergizes well with cards such as the Goku, Zamasu, the Monkey, you know, things like that. Then we also have one of the best pieces of removal that basically exists, which is Magic Boo. You play it for 1, you get to just suck up a battle card, gets around, can't be KO'd and stuff. Does not ignore barriers, so that's the one downside about it. But you can get rid of ultimates, tokens, whatever, it doesn't matter. And even if they don't have anything to get rid of, you still sack it just to make yourself a 25k into the end of your opponent's turn. And it's a blocker, so if they did floodgate you on the previous swing, you could at least just have up a 25k blocker that they have to get around before they could get at you. This Goku right here is something that you go into when you want to make sure your attack is as close to absolutely safe as possible. It cannot be removed by your opponent's skills. It's a 15k for 1 energy, 2 Z energy, and that's about all you care about. Then we have our 2 life takers, and I played 2 for a reason. So first thing is, surmounting is usually the one that most people go with, but I have been having people be very savvy towards this card and holding up counterplays to stop it. So we got Jiro. Jiro not only does most of the stuff that surmounting does, but it's also a green 1-drop so that you can pop it with your unison. Same thing goes with the Goku. You can swing with the Goku. If they stop the Goku swing, okay, who cares, pop it with your unison, rip a card. But sometimes the problem with Jiro is that you have to reveal a green cards to place it at the bottom of your deck. So if you're in a situation, as random as it may be, where you don't have a green card either to do it with, or that you don't have a green card that you want to use for that skill, you'll at least still have some mounting to clear the last hurdle. So that is the deck right there. As always, the link will be down below. I'll catch you again next time, and this is VG Time signing out.